After everything with Jade had unfolded, I felt like I had been given a second chance. Almost like a reset button had been pressed on my career. The $5 million deal, which had been jeopardized by Jade's actions, had been successfully finalized. It wasn't just a win for the hotel. It was a validation of my efforts, the long hours, the stress that had piled up over the years. I had secured my place as one of the top salespeople in the company, and more importantly, I had earned the trust of my colleagues and clients who had witnessed how I handled the pressure. With Jade gone, I found a new focus. I wasn't just about closing the next deal. I started mentoring others in the sales department, showing them the ropes and sharing the lessons I'd learned the hard way. I wanted to create a team where success wasn't just about individual achievement, but about working together. I wanted to show them that integrity could be just as powerful as ambition. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't trying to prove myself to anyone anymore, not to my parents, not to Ryan, not to the people who had doubted me. I had stopped caring about what anyone else thought. Instead, I cared about doing the work with honesty and pride. It was no longer about being the best in the room. It was about being proud of the work I was doing. As for Jade, she disappeared from the industry. Legal action was taken, and she quickly became forgotten. Her downfall wasn't about vengeance, it was about justice. She had burned every bridge, and that was a lesson I'd learned. You can't build something lasting on lies and manipulation. A few months later, I received an invitation to speak at a high-profile industry conference on professional resilience. At first, I wasn't sure I was the right person for it, but then I realized my story could help someone else. So I agreed. And when the day came, I shared my experiences. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a story of perseverance. The response was overwhelming. People thanked me for showing them that standing up for yourself is never a weakness. Walking off that stage, I felt peace I hadn't known in years. The hotel industry had been my battleground, but it had also become my proving ground. I had fought through the storm, and now I was standing tall. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. As I continued to rise, I knew my journey wasn't over. I had learned that success wasn't about escaping challenges. It was about how you face them and let your actions define you. For the first time in my life, I was proud of who I was. And nothing, no one, was going to take that from me. When Jade first arrived at the hotel, I thought it was just a typical new hire situation, a bit of training, a few introductions, and then she'd be another part of the team. I had no idea she would become the catalyst for what would turn out to be one of the most challenging and stressful periods of my career. It didn't take long for me to see that Jade was not like any other colleague I had worked with. She exuded a kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Maybe it was the high-profile experience she'd gained at her previous job. Or maybe it was her innate belief that she was destined for something bigger. But the first time I trained her, it was clear that she saw herself as above me. "Are you really the one training me?" she asked, the surprise in her voice impossible to miss. She didn't even try to hide the skepticism in her tone, making me feel like I wasn't up to the task. "Well, I guess everyone has their own way of doing things," she added with a shrug. I felt a sharp sting of irritation. Sure, I didn't have the luxury hotel experience that she did, but I had worked hard to get where I was. I wasn't some newbie. I was an integral part of this hotel, and I had seen it all. But instead of firing back, I just smiled and tried to keep things professional. After all, I was the one in charge of training her, and I wasn't about to let her dismiss my authority. But Jade's behavior didn't stop with a few sarcastic comments. As the days went on, I began to notice that she was dismissive of everything I tried to teach her. I would go over how we handled guest relations, emphasizing the importance of personal touches, things like remembering clients' names, taking the time to ask about their needs, and always going the extra mile to make them feel valued. But Jade seemed uninterested, brushing off my advice as if it were outdated. "You really think clients care about small talk?" she asked one day, as I was explaining how to handle difficult guests. "What they care about is getting what they paid for. You know, results, not your personal touch nonsense." It was frustrating, but I still did my best to keep my cool. I had spent years perfecting the art of hospitality, and I wasn't about to let her undermine everything I knew. Still, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. What if she was right? What if the industry was changing and the personal approach I valued was no longer the way forward? I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself that Jade's approach was just different, and that it was fine to have contrasting methods. After all, there was more than one way to be successful in sales, right? But things didn't stay civil for long. As Jade settled into her role in the sales department, she started to openly undermine me. It began with little things, snide comments here and there. During a team meeting, I was discussing how we could improve guest loyalty through consistent follow-ups after events, and she cut in with a loud laugh. "Why bother? Clients don't care if you check in on them 2 weeks later," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "It's all about the sale. Get in, close the deal, and move on. No one's looking for friends." I could feel the eyes of the room on me, and for a moment I wondered if my approach really was outdated. Maybe Jade had a point? But then I thought back to all the clients who had come back to the hotel time and time again because of the personal care we gave them. People didn't just stay at our hotel because of luxury amenities. They stayed because of the experience, the trust we built with them. Still, the comments stung, and I started second-guessing myself. I pushed through the discomfort and focused on the tasks at hand. But Jade wasn't content with just making cutting remarks. Soon, it became clear that she was actively trying to undermine my work. One day, I overheard her talking to a client on the phone about a deal I had been working on for weeks. It was a big corporate event that could bring in thousands of dollars for the hotel. I had been in constant contact with the client, walking them through the details and tailoring the event to meet their exact needs. But when I walked past Jade's desk, I heard her saying things that made my blood run cold. "Well, Sophie's been a little slow to finalize the details, but don't worry, I can speed things up for you. I'll make sure we get everything sorted out, no problem." I froze for a moment, stunned. I had been working with that client for months, and now Jade was trying to swoop in and steal the deal? She hadn't even bothered to check with me first. When I approached her later, I was calm. Probably too calm. "Jade, we've been working with that client for a while. I don't appreciate you stepping in without consulting me first," I said, keeping my voice steady even though I was seething inside. She looked at me with that same arrogant smirk she always wore. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I step on your toes?" "Don't worry, I'm just trying to help. You know how competitive this business is. You can't always rely on old methods." The jab stung, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I nodded and walked away, reminding myself that I didn't need to engage with her pettiness. I'd close the deal my way, and if she got in the way of that, I'd deal with it. However, the damage had been done. It wasn't just her words, it was the fact that the management team seemed to be taking her side. I noticed that whenever she spoke, people listened. She was getting attention. She was getting the praise I had worked so hard to earn, and it didn't feel fair. I had spent years cultivating relationships, bringing in business, and driving results. And here she was, with her flashy arrogance and her smooth sales pitch, moving in like a storm. The more Jade undermined me, the more my frustration grew. I tried to stay professional, but it was getting harder. Every time I turned around, she was there, poking holes in my methods, questioning my success, and making sly comments to anyone who would listen. I began to feel like I was losing my place in the hotel, and I couldn't help but feel like Jade was slowly, but surely, replacing me. And the worst part? It wasn't just that she was challenging my way of doing things. It was the fact that she was casting doubt on everything I had built. The reputation I'd worked so hard to create was starting to feel fragile. Would the higher-ups buy into her version of events? Would they believe that her way was the future, and that my approach was old-fashioned and irrelevant? It was a nightmare. Every day I had to watch as Jade seemed to rise through the ranks, taking credit for everything that went right, while I felt like I was slipping further and further into the background. The tension between us was palpable, but I knew I had to keep going. I had to prove that I was more than just a nice salesperson. I had to show them that I was worth more than the rumors Jade was spreading. But with each passing day, I found myself wondering how long I could keep this up. How long could I fight this battle without losing everything I had worked so hard for? As if the constant undermining wasn't enough, Jade's behavior started to take a darker turn. What began as petty snide remarks and subtle sabotage soon escalated into outright harassment. It was like watching a slow-moving train wreck, knowing what was coming but feeling powerless to stop it. The first signs of real trouble came when I began noticing small, inexplicable things happening around my workspace. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence. My notepad, the one I used to jot down important details about clients or upcoming events, went missing. I figured I had just misplaced it. Then, it happened again. My phone charger, always kept neatly in my drawer, was gone. I asked around, but no one seemed to know anything. I thought maybe I had left it somewhere by mistake, though I wasn't usually that careless. But soon, the little annoyances turned into something more significant. I had a meeting scheduled with a major client, and the night before, I stayed late to prepare everything. Details on the client's preferences, specific requests, flight itineraries for their travel. The next morning, I arrived at the office only to find my notes missing. Not just a few pages, entire files were gone, the ones with the most critical information I needed for the presentation. My heart sank. This wasn't a coincidence. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was deliberately targeting me, but I didn't have enough proof. It was frustrating. I'd been working late nights, doing everything right, and here was someone actively making my life harder. Still, I told myself to keep my head down and stay focused. I wasn't going to let it derail me, but the psychological toll was starting to take its toll. Then came the day that shattered any remaining illusions I had about Jade's accidental behavior. I was on an important conference call with one of our top clients, finalizing the details for an exclusive event we were hosting at the hotel. The stakes were high. This was a $2 million deal, and the client was already on the fence. As I was discussing the final terms, the call suddenly cut off. I glanced at the phone, confused, then hit redial, but it was dead. I checked the connection, and that's when I saw her. Jade stood in the corner of the room, an innocent grin plastered on her face, the phone cord dangling in her hand. She had disconnected the call. "Did you just unplug the phone?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. My heart raced in my chest, but I couldn't let her see that. "Me?" "Nah," Jade replied nonchalantly, shrugging. "Maybe the phone's broken, or maybe you're just paranoid." I didn't know how to react. I was furious, but I also knew I didn't have any proof. It was my word against hers. And even though the timing was too perfect to ignore, I couldn't say for certain that she'd deliberately sabotaged the call. She was good at covering her tracks, and everyone knew she had a way of spinning situations in her favor. Still, I couldn't let this slide. It was becoming clear that Jade wasn't just a competitor. She was actively trying to sabotage me, to ruin my career. I went straight to my boss, but when I reported the incident, I was met with indifference. "It's probably just a technical issue," he said dismissively. "You're overthinking this, Sophie. We don't have enough evidence to take action." I was stunned. This was a serious issue, and all he could say was that I was imagining things. I tried to argue, but he shut me down. "Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill, okay?" I was crushed. I had worked my ass off for years, and now, here was someone actively trying to undermine me, and I was being dismissed. It was like a slap in the face. I felt powerless and helpless. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't about to let Jade win. I had fought too hard to get where I was, and I wasn't going to let her ruin everything. The next few weeks were an emotional roller coaster. Every day something else would happen. Missing files, emails getting deleted, notes that I had worked on for hours just disappearing. But it was subtle, and no one else seemed to notice. I couldn't prove anything, but I could feel it. I was being targeted. Then, Jade's true intentions became crystal clear. It happened during the planning for a massive $5 million deal we were in the running for, a medical device company looking to host a major conference at our hotel. This was huge. This could be the deal that not only secured my place as the top sales rep, but also positioned me for a promotion I had been working toward for years. Everyone knew how much this contract meant, and I knew I couldn't afford any mistakes. But Jade, sensing an opportunity to outshine me, pushed her way into the project. At first, I didn't mind. After all, the more hands on deck, the better, right? But as soon as she got involved, things started to go sideways. Jade began making decisions without consulting me, sending the wrong details to the client and suggesting products that didn't meet their needs. It was blatant. She was trying to take control. At one point, she even tried to book the client's flights without consulting me. She booked her own ticket to the conference, of course, but forgot to book mine. The day of the meeting, I showed up at the airport, only to be told that there was no seat for me. I had been left stranded, with no way to get to the meeting that could make or break the deal. I was furious. This wasn't a mistake. This was sabotage. Jade had done this on purpose. And the worst part? She didn't even try to cover it up. When I called her, she acted like it was no big deal. "Oh, I guess I messed up," she said with a shrug, sounding far too casual for someone who had just nearly ruined a multi-million-dollar deal. I knew at that moment that I had to take action. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to make sure the higher-ups knew exactly what was going on. Jade had crossed a line. This wasn't just petty competition, it was deliberate sabotage, and I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. The moment I found myself stranded at the airport, watching the clock tick away as I scrambled for a new flight, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience or an isolated mistake. Jade had gone too far. She wasn't merely a competitor, she was a force of sabotage, and I had to make sure she paid the price for it. The stakes were too high to let her get away with this, especially when everything I had worked for was on the line. The $5 million contract wasn't just another deal, it was a game changer. This was the kind of deal that could elevate me in the company, securing my position not just as a top performer, but also giving me a shot at the promotion I'd been working tirelessly for. I knew that if I didn't close this deal, it could set me back for years. But Jade, in her selfish pursuit of self-promotion, was determined to derail it. As I sat there in the airport lounge, feeling both angry and humiliated, I realized I had to do something drastic. I couldn't fight this battle alone anymore. It was time to bring in the big guns. I called my brother, Ryan. Ryan had always been my rock. He was several years younger than me, but his career had skyrocketed. He was the CEO of the medical device company we were working with on the deal. I had always kept our work lives separate, but now I needed his help. I explained the situation to him. Everything that had been happening with Jade, how she'd sabotaged my flight arrangements, and the way she'd been undermining me at every turn. He was furious. "You don't have to deal with this, Sophie," he said, his voice tight with anger. "I'll make sure this stops, and I'll make sure Jade faces the consequences." I didn't expect him to get involved, but in that moment I realized just how much he cared. Not just for me as his sister, but for the work I was doing. I could hear the confidence in his voice, the same confidence I had always admired in him. He wasn't about to let someone like Jade get away with destroying what I had worked for. Ryan immediately contacted his team at the company and had them escalate the situation. He also reached out to the senior leadership at the hotel. "I want this dealt with, and I want it dealt with now," he told them, his tone leaving no room for doubt. Within hours, A series of meetings were arranged to look into the situation, and Ryan made it clear that Jade's actions were going to be investigated thoroughly. I knew Jade had been playing a dangerous game, but I hadn't realized just how deep the rabbit hole went. As the investigation unfolded, everything started to unravel. I wasn't the only one who had experienced Jade's sabotaging behavior. Several colleagues came forward, sharing their own stories of how she had caused delays, spread misinformation, and manipulated situations to make herself look better. Jade had played the system for as long as she could, but the truth was starting to come to light. The more the investigation revealed, the more I realized just how manipulative Jade truly was. She had used every trick in the book to climb the ranks, charming the right people, flattering the right clients, and stepping on anyone who got in her way. But in the end, it wasn't just her underhanded tactics that did her in, it was her own arrogance. She had underestimated the people she thought she could control. And in the end, that would be her downfall. But even as the evidence mounted against her, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Part of me wondered if I had done the right thing by bringing Ryan into this. It felt like I had crossed a line. Was I being petty? Should I have just let Jade's behavior slide and continued to push forward on my own? But every time I remembered being left stranded at the airport, or how Jade had tried to steal my deals and discredit my hard work, that doubt disappeared. I knew I had made the right decision. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for my career, for my reputation, and for the values I had built my career on. No one had the right to trample all over that, especially not someone who had used deceit and manipulation to get ahead. Meanwhile, Jade wasn't taking this lightly. The more pressure mounted, the more her behavior became erratic. She started showing up at work late, making excuses for missed deadlines, and refusing to take responsibility for any of the mistakes that had been uncovered. She had no answers, no way to explain her actions, and it became clear that she was losing control. But despite all this, she still tried to shift the narrative. In a final attempt to save face, Jade tried to claim that I was the one who had been sabotaging her career, spreading rumors, and undermining her work. She attempted to turn the tables on me, but no one was buying it. The evidence was too damning and her behavior was too transparent. Then came the bombshell. During a meeting with senior management, Jade's lies caught up with her. The investigation had uncovered email chains, phone records, and testimony from multiple employees, all of which painted a damning picture of her attempts to undermine me, steal clients, and falsify reports. The evidence was irrefutable. Jade was officially out. She was removed from the project and suspended while the company launched a full investigation into her conduct. The fallout was swift. Within days, Jade was terminated from the hotel, and a formal legal action was initiated. Her career, which she had worked so hard to build through manipulation and deceit, crumbled before her eyes. She tried to fight back, but there was no escaping the evidence. She had made too many mistakes, and now she was facing the consequences. For me, it was a bittersweet victory. I was relieved that the nightmare was finally over, but I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of loss. Jade had been my competitor, yes, but she had also pushed me in ways I hadn't expected. I had learned things about myself, things I hadn't known I was capable of. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought. I had learned how to stand up for myself, even when the odds were stacked against me. The $5 million deal went through without a hitch, and as promised, I was given the promotion I had worked so hard for. It wasn't just a professional victory, it was a personal one. I had fought for my place, for my integrity, and for the clients who trusted me. And in the end, it had paid off. But Jade's downfall wasn't just about her losing her job. It was a reminder that no matter how hard someone tries to tear you down, your success will always speak louder than their sabotage. And in the end, it was my hard work, dedication, and integrity that had won out. The moment Jade was officially removed from the project, I felt a strange mix of relief and triumph. The weight that had been pressing on my shoulders for so long finally began to lift, but I couldn't fully relax. The war with her had taken a toll on me, and even though I had won, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. There was still that burning need to confront her, to look her in the eye and make her understand the damage she had caused. I didn't have to wait long. The day Jade was pulled off the project, she found me in the hallway, her face pale and tight with anger. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as though she was trying to figure out what went wrong. She was no longer the confident, arrogant figure who had walked into the office months ago. Now she looked rattled, desperate. "Sophie," she began, her voice shaking but still holding a hint of defiance. "You think you've won, don't you? You've played your little game, brought in your brother, and now they're firing me. But this isn't over. You know that, right?" I stood there, facing her, feeling the weight of everything I had endured. Every remark, every sabotage, every lie she'd spread, it had all led to this moment. She wasn't going to win this time, not anymore. "I didn't do this, Jade." "You did," I said calmly, but with a steady confidence that surprised even me. "You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it." Her eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, her lips curling into a snarl. "You think you're better than me? That I didn't deserve this? You were nothing when you started here, Sophie. Just a receptionist. And now look at you, playing the hero. But I know the truth. You wouldn't be here without connections, without your looks." I didn't let her words hit me. I had heard all this before, the insinuations, the belittling. I had grown used to it, learned to ignore the noise and focus on the work. But this time, I was in control. I wasn't the girl who had to prove herself anymore. I was the woman who had fought for every success, every contract, every promotion. "You're right about one thing, Jade," I said, my voice steady. "I've worked for everything I have, and unlike you, I've never had to tear anyone down to get there." For a moment, there was silence. Jade's expression faltered just for a second, but she quickly regained her composure. She gave me a sharp, almost bitter laugh. "Good luck, Sophie, but don't think you're invincible. People like me always come back." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, knowing that I had finally put an end to the chapter of her manipulation and sabotage. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Jade's career unraveled. Legal proceedings were set in motion, and the company made it clear that they would not tolerate her behavior. The fallout from her actions spread far beyond the hotel, and soon enough she was a cautionary tale whispered about in every corner of the industry. But I didn't take pleasure in her downfall. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted justice, and that's what I got. The truth was, Jade had been the one who had underestimated me, thinking I was just another player in her game. But I had showed myself, that I was much more than that. This wasn't just about winning the fight. It was about proving that I had earned my place, that I wasn't going to let anyone dictate my worth. In the end, I walked away with the satisfaction of knowing that I hadn't let anyone's negativity, jealousy, or sabotage define me. I had earned my success, and I was only just getting started. After everything with Jade had unfolded, I felt like I had been given a second chance, almost like a reset button had been pressed on my career. The dust was settling, but I knew things would never be quite the same. Not just because of the promotion or the recognition, but because I had learned so much about myself in those intense months of struggle. I had come out the other side stronger, more confident, and more sure of what I wanted. The $5 million deal, the one that had been jeopardized by Jade's actions, had been successfully finalized. It wasn't just a win for the hotel. It was a validation of my efforts, the long hours, the late nights, the stress that had piled up over the years. I'd secured my place as one of the top salespeople in the company, but more than that, I had earned the trust of my colleagues and clients, who had witnessed firsthand how I handled the pressure. With Jade gone, I found a new focus. I wasn't just about pushing for the next sale or the next contract. I started mentoring others in the sales department, showing them the ropes and sharing the lessons I'd learned the hard way. I made it a point to help them navigate the politics of the industry, to show them how integrity could be just as powerful as ambition. I wanted to create a team where people felt supported, where success wasn't just about individual achievement, but about working together. But beyond the professional accomplishments, something inside me had changed. I wasn't trying to prove myself to anyone anymore. Not to my parents, not to Ryan, not to the people who had doubted me. I had stopped caring about what anyone else thought. Instead, I cared about doing the work, doing it well and doing it with honesty. It was no longer about being the best in the room. It was about being proud of the work I was doing. As for Jade, she disappeared from the industry. Legal action was taken, and I don't know if it was the severity of her actions or just the reputation she'd built for herself, but she was quickly forgotten. There was no grand redemption, no dramatic comeback, just the consequences of her choices. She had burned bridges everywhere, and that was a lesson I'd learned too. You can't build something lasting on lies, manipulation, and sabotage, but I didn't spend much time thinking about her. In the end, her downfall wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice. And justice, in this case, wasn't about getting even. It was about me taking back my narrative and realizing that I was worthy of everything I had worked for. A few months after the chaos settled, I got a call to speak at a high-profile industry conference on professional resilience. At first, I wasn't sure I was the right person for it. Who wanted to listen to someone like me who'd just survived a toxic colleague? But then I realized that maybe, just maybe, my story could help someone else. I agreed, and when the day came, I shared my experiences. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a story of perseverance. The response was overwhelming. I received messages from people, sales reps, managers, and even senior executives, thanking me for my honesty, for showing that standing up for yourself is never a weakness. It was humbling. I realized I wasn't just sharing a story. I was helping others see that no matter the hurdles they faced, they had the power to rise above them. Walking off that stage, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. The hotel industry had been my battleground, but it had also become my proving ground. I had fought through the storm, and now I was standing tall. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And as I continued to rise in my career, I knew that the journey was far from over. I wasn't done proving myself, not to anyone else, but to the person I had become. I'd learned that success wasn't about escaping the challenges. It was about how you face them, how you rise in the aftermath, and how you let your actions define you. For the first time in my life, I was proud of who I was, and nothing, no one, was going to take that from me. Story 2. My husband sent me a picture of himself and his 23-year-old girlfriend at our vacation house along with divorce papers via email. I quietly drank my morning coffee and said, "The house is mine now. Are you certain of that?" and disabled both his email and phone. Little did he know, it was 7:15 a.m. I was in Nashville when I got the email that broke my heart. Unaware that her father had just blown our lives up with a single message, my 1-year-old daughter, Emma, was blissfully chattering in her high chair. The topic line was straightforward. Let's go on. When I opened the attachment and saw the picture, I nearly spilt my coffee. My spouse of 5 years, Donald, encircled a young blonde woman who couldn't have been more than 23. Our lake cottage, a vacation property we purchased only a year ago, was in front of them. It was the same house where we had spent many weekends discussing our future plans. The email said, "I now own the house. I've already moved in with Amber. My lawyer will be sending over the divorce papers. Don't struggle with it. I am the owner of the deed." I felt my hands trembling as I placed down my coffee mug. Not out of terror, though. No, this was just my anger building. Donald genuinely believed that he could just give me divorce papers via email and take our vacation house, the house I had purchased with my business's earnings. He was unaware of what was about to happen. I observed our kid playing with her meal, still naive and joyful. I then took a quick look at the framed picture hanging on our kitchen wall. On our wedding day, Donald and I were beaming as if we had everything all out. 5 years of marriage. And he decided to finish it this way, with a picture of himself with a lady almost half my age and a smug email. I inhaled deeply before picking up my phone. Before I clicked block, my finger briefly lingered over Donald's contact details. I then opened my email and replied with 2 short sentences. "Are you certain of that? You should thoroughly review the documentation." I smiled, clicked send, blocked his email, and turned back to my kid. I was constantly undervalued by Donald. He viewed me as the understanding spouse who had helped him with his profession while also starting my own side company. He likely assumed that I would cry and even plead with him to change his mind, but he had overlooked one important aspect of me. Being careless about safeguarding my assets did not lead to the success of my business. In hindsight, I should have anticipated this. There were signs. I ignored minor warning signs because I was too preoccupied with managing our new baby and my expanding business. Over the previous 3 months, Donald had been visiting the lake house on a regular basis for work, saying he required quiet time to work on a major corporate merger. I supported his professional decisions while starting my own business from the ground up. I was already operating a profitable internet store when we first met 6 years ago, but Donald pretended it was simply a fun pastime. He enjoyed sharing with others how he had assisted me in making it a reality. The reality? Since we were married, the worth of my business has tripled, all via my own hard work and strategic planning. I had thought of the lake home, the ideal retreat for our family. It's remote enough to feel like a true getaway, yet close enough to Nashville for weekend getaways. Donald had insisted on having his name appear on the deed for tax considerations, even though I had paid for it in full with the earnings from my business. He said that although I had consented, I had first had my lawyer prepare a number of extremely detailed paperwork pertaining to the real ownership of the property. Donald had been particularly aloof last week, using our home office phone for hours at a time. He became defensive when I questioned him about the merger, accusing me of not comprehending the intricacies of corporate economics. Rich, coming from a guy whose financial portfolio I'd secretly been managing for the previous 3 years, I took up Emma from her high chair and hugged her close, inhaling in her beautiful baby aroma. Her eyes were Donald's, but I was determined. It was already evident in the way she approached each new task. Now that I was looking at her, I was more determined. It was no longer just about me. It was also about safeguarding her future. With Emma on my hip, I made my way to my home office and turned on my laptop. I sent the paperwork indicating I had bought the lake house to my lawyer via email in a matter of minutes. Next, I viewed the stream from the security camera I had put on the property. Another safeguard Donald knew nothing about. Everything had been captured on camera. Each visit, each visitor, each betrayal. Amber may have been celebrating her win at the lake home, but she was unaware that she was the subject of a film that would play a significant role in my divorce case. It buzzed on my phone. Julia, my helper Rachel, texted me. "This is something you must see." A link to Amber's Instagram page was included. Dozens of pictures of her with Donald dated back months. She even wore my clothing and used my belongings in several of the photos that were taken in our bedroom at the lake house. In the most recent post, she was seen showing off a huge diamond band that belonged to my grandmother. Donald had promised that we would give Emma the ring on her 18th birthday. I was ill. This was not a new incident. Before Emma was even born, this had been happening. 8 months ago, Amber proudly displayed a key to the lake house in one of the pictures, reading "Home Sweet Home" with my eyes and love heart as a caption. Moving in together is a new phase, when our infant kept me up all night. A woman who had just graduated from college had been playing house with Donald. His professional travels coincided exactly with the dates on the pictures. He had always stated that he needed to check on the lake cottage, which was why he was working late every weekend. All of it had been false. My hands are trembling. I launched the banking app. The second blow came at that moment. I put money into a joint account for Emma's college fund, but it was empty. Every cent, almost $100,000. Lost. Transferred out yesterday to an account I didn't recognize. The wrath I'd felt before turned into something cold and calculated. I phoned my bank immediately, then my lawyer. I had confirmation in an hour. For months, Donald had been methodically transferring funds in anticipation of this day. He had even attempted but failed to access my company accounts. At least those were safeguarded by separate financial systems and unbreakable contracts. I was talking to the attorneys on the phone when Rachel phoned. "Julia? There's more." A number of screenshots from Amber's private Facebook page were forwarded to me by her. The girl had been boasting to her pals about how she had found a wealthy, older guy and how they intended to demand the full value of his uninteresting wife. Even jokes about how unaware I was and how preoccupied I was with my small internet store to see what was going on were included in the communications. They had no idea that my small internet store had tripled my fortune. In order to give Donald the impression that my company was only successful and not extremely profitable, I had kept that knowledge secret. He had never been able to examine my company's books well enough to fully comprehend what I had created because of his ego. I glanced at Emma, who was now soundly sleeping in her playpen. "Don't worry, darling daughter," I whispered. "Daddy is going to learn a valuable lesson from Mommy about the undervaluation of women in the corporate world." Over the following several hours, I was quite busy. Sarah, my lawyer, showed up to my house shortly before noon, and we sat in my home office going over paperwork. Emma and Rachel had a snooze upstairs while maintaining watch. I had increased the house's security. I had a feeling Donald wouldn't accept my email reply. He's not as smart as he believes, though. "Looking over the Lake Home paperwork," Sarah said, "we have unquestionable evidence that your company's finances were used to buy the home, even if the deed is in his name. The contracts, the transfer documents, and even the emails in which he acknowledges that it was your money. Everything is here." I pulled up my laptop's security camera feeds and nodded. "There's more. Take a look at this." Throughout the previous months, the video captured Donald and Amber coming inside the lake house at different occasions. However, Sarah was particularly intrigued by the video that was shot 2 days ago. It included Donald hauling box after box of household goods, including a few artworks I had bought with the money I made from my business. Sarah noted that it was an attempt to steal company property. For tax reasons, the art collection was bought via your business. The paperwork is with us. At that moment, a call from an unidentified number appeared on my phone. I switched it to speaker mode. "Don't you think you're really intelligent?" Donald's tone was abrasive and irate. "Julia, check your work email." My solicitors have also been quite busy. I felt sick to my stomach as I opened my email. In an emergency petition, Donald's solicitors claimed that my company was founded on his contacts and experience. During the divorce process, they were requesting temporary control of my company's finances, as well as a thorough audit. You would make a sincere effort to keep me company. My heart was pounding, but I spoke steadily. "I founded the business before I ever met you." "You constructed," he chuckled icily. "Who do you believe provided you with all of these business contacts? Who put you in touch with the appropriate people? Without me, Julia, you would be nothing." Amber is aware that she knows how to express gratitude. Sarah was already typing frantically on her laptop when I turned to her and silenced the phone. She gestured with her finger. "Hold on. Donald." The phone was unmuted by me. "Purchasing time. Give your actions a lot of thought." Yes, my solicitors will contact me regarding Emma as well. You can't be a good mother because you're too preoccupied with your valuable business. Amber gets along well with children. She was a nanny once. The idea of taking Emma chilled my blood, but Sarah brought her laptop to me before I could reply. A 3-year-old email that Donald had sent to a buddy bemoaning my success was displayed on the screen. She doesn't need my assistance because she will not even consider my business advice. She is correct. Her business is now worth more than my yearly wage. It's embarrassing. Into the phone, I grinned. I just emailed your lawyer something, Donald. Before threatening my business further, you might want to ask him. What are you discussing? Let's pretend you didn't realize how private your email archives were. Call off your solicitors or I'll send your boss an email next. What would he think of all those business relationships you say you've given me? There was silence on the cue. Next, click. Rachel rushed into the office with a pale face as Sarah was still going through Donald's emails. You must see this immediately, Julia. She pushed her iPad across from me. A draft press statement from Donald's business announcing his elevation to Chief Financial Officer effective next month was shown on the screen. All of a sudden, everything fell into place. The aggressive legal campaign, the deliberate actions with our finances, and the timing of his romance with Amber. It was more than simply abandoning me. Prior to his major promotion, he was cleaning house in an effort to protect his assets and reduce the amount of money he would lose in a divorce. There's more. Rachel flipped to a different page. Amber is not your typical girlfriend. She is the niece of the CEO. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the stomach. There was no younger lady that Donald had fallen in love with. In order to get promoted, he had planned a connection with the CEO's niece, the stolen money, the lake mansion, including the Emma-related threats. All of this was part of his plan to begin a new life with his ideal, well-connected young bride as a CFO. Sarah raised her head from her computer. I discovered something else, Julia. Donald has been involved in the corporate merger. One of your main rivals in business is involved. He will have access to information that might cause significant harm to your business if he is appointed CFO. I balled my hands into fists. Donald wasn't only attempting to harm me, he was setting up shop to demolish everything I had constructed. I thought about all those nights he'd spent in his home office claiming to be working on merger agreements. Instead, has he been looking through my business files? Verify the activities on my home network, I informed Rachel. Pay attention to any efforts to get access to my company's servers. Sarah discovered something more while Rachel was at work. Take a look at these 6-month-old emails that Donald and Amber exchanged. Even before Emma could walk, they were making plans for this. Amber wrote, "We can utilize the insider knowledge to force Julia's business out of the market once you're CFO. Uncle Robert promises to assist." The thought of them conspiring against me while I was taking care of our newborn baby made me feel nauseous. However, they had become careless due to their conceit. They had left a trail of evidence that may damage the CEO's reputation in addition to Donald's advancement. My thoughts were interrupted by Rachel's words. I located it. Donald's laptop made many attempts to access your company's servers. Although he tried, he was unable to breach your security. Corporate espionage is what that is. I got up and went to the window to see Emma play with her favorite plush elephant in her playpen. Donald believed he was very smart for securing his future through his connection with Amber. However, he had overlooked the most crucial business lesson. Sarah, you should never undervalue your opponent. I consult my lawyer once again, write a letter to the board of directors of the firm, and include proof of Donald's attempted corporate espionage and the CEO's use of insider knowledge against a rival, include the security tape showing Donald robbing the lake cottage of business property. How about Amber? Rachel inquired. I grinned glumly. The way their CEO employed a family member to assist in planning corporate espionage would likely pique the board's curiosity. Do you not? My phone rang with a lake house security system alarm just as we were getting ready to send the email to the board. Donald had returned, and he was not by himself. Amber was not alone with him. Her uncle Robert, the CEO, was also present. They entered the house carrying boxes. More of my stuff, of course. Watching the live broadcast, I encouraged Sarah to wait. Let's first observe their actions. We could see them in the living room through the security cameras. The sound was really clear, another element that Donald was unaware of. Glasses in hand, they were enjoying champagne for the aspiring CFO. To Donald and my lovely niece, who made it all possible, Robert lifted his glass. Julia doesn't know what's going to happen. Donald chuckled. The board will announce my promotion tomorrow morning, and by the afternoon, our legal team will have access to her company's financial records for auditing purposes. Her business will be useless in a month. What's the best part? Amber added her voice. Her biggest issue, in her opinion, is the lake house. Hold off until she learns of the offshore accounts. I went cold. Rachel. What? Offshore accounts? Rachel tapped her keyboard quickly. Her face darkened in a matter of minutes. Located them. For months, Donald has been transferring funds from your joint accounts to foreign assets. Not just the money for Emma's college. Somehow he was able to divert about $300,000. I didn't realize how big this was. Donald wasn't only preparing to abandon me. For months, he had been routinely robbing our family. The drama surrounding the lake home was only a diversion from his larger plan. Robert then uttered something that chilled me to the bone. Once Julia's firm tanks, our merger goes through effortlessly. Our subsidiaries will share her market share, and her problematic ethical business model will be a thing of the past. In addition to becoming profitable, my company's dedication to fair labor and ecological methods was upending their whole sector. This went beyond Donald's romance and his promotion. Because it endangered their economic model, they sought to demolish what I had constructed. I instructed Sarah to send the email. But first, add one more item. Go to Emma's birthday backup server password and attach the Mark insurance file. When Sarah opened the file, her eyes sprang wide. It had years' worth of records regarding dubious activities at Donald's business, data that I had acquired while overseeing his financial account. I never imagined that I would need it, therefore I had saved it as insurance. Julia. Rachel looked at her screen and interrupted. Donald recently made another attempt to log into our company's servers from the lake residence. He's becoming desperate. I saw Donald excuse himself to the home office via the camera. My office at home? Our IT staff was prepared when he sat at my desk, most likely attempting to breach my company account once more. They'd established a phony doorway, letting him think he was succeeding. I told Rachel to let him in, let him believe he is, because their entire house of cards collapses in around 10 minutes after that board email is sent. Sarah raised her head from her computer. Are your emails ready? Shall I press the send button? I glanced at the security footage one final time. Robert, Donald, and Amber were still rejoicing over their fictitious triumph. Take action. The speed of the response exceeded my expectations. Robert's phone rang through the security stream just minutes after Sarah sent the email. As he listened to what I imagined was the board's initial response, we saw his face become pale. Are you referring to an urgent meeting? He called out into the telephone. What proof was sent by whom? Presumably checking his email, Donald reached for his own phone. He lost the color in his face. She knew the servers. Julia was aware of my attempt to gain access to them. It improves. As we watched the drama play out, I murmured to Sarah, await it. Amber's phone began exploding with alerts just in time. All of the board members had received anonymous private Facebook messages from her, the ones where she boasted that she had assisted Donald in stealing company data. The precise moment their joy descended into terror was captured on the surveillance camera. Robert yelled into his cell phone. Donald was hurriedly attempting to close his laptop, and Amber was in tears, mascara flowing down her cheeks. The coup de grace followed. Police vehicles driving up to the lake, home, lights blazing. It turns out that financial fraud and business espionage are significant offenses. Who could have known? As we watched via the cameras, I took Emma in my arms and hugged her close. Take a look at that newborn girl. That is the result of others undervaluing your mother. Before the broadcast stopped, the last thing I saw was Donald being released in handcuffs while continuing to yell that the home belonged to him. The aftermath was stunning. Robert and Donald were both dismissed within a day. The board's inquiry revealed years of fraudulent activities in addition to the conspiracy against my firm, which I was unaware of. Amber's promising influencer career was ruined by her involvement in corporate espionage. She had returned to Ohio to live with her parents, as far as I knew. Investigations were conducted and the offshore accounts were blocked. Donald was given back all of the money he had taken, plus interest. As it turns out, trying to steal corporate property is a wonderful way to forfeit any property rights. The deed was moved to my name, as it ought to have been from the beginning. Donald made an effort to apologize, sending long emails explaining how he had lost himself and how a younger lady and power had tempted him. I never answered. The divorce documents were unambiguous. He lost everything he attempted to pilfer plus more. He would never again work in finance because of the proof of his corporate espionage. In my case, following the controversy, even more investors were drawn to my firm because of its moral business practices. We entered markets that were previously controlled by Donald's firm. Customers who had lost trust in established organizations were drawn to us because of our reputation for integrity. We now spend weekends at the lake house, creating new memories with Emma. I sometimes think about Donald's arrogant email with that picture while I'm sitting on the balcony watching her play. He believed he was declaring triumph, but in reality he was only recording the start of his demise. By the way, I saved that email. In my workplace, it is framed, a warning to never underestimate a lady who's established something worth defending. Story 3. Hi, my love. Today I caught 3 fish. The alone is really helping me to cleanse my head. I stared at Nathan's text message, then at the photo of him lounging at a seaside bar in Punta Cana. He placed his arm around his secretary. The timestamp indicates that it was 2 minutes ago. That's wonderful, honey. Despite the wrath that was swelling inside of me, I responded back, my fingers steady. I'm so delighted you're finding tranquility in nature. My name is Liana Thompson, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought my marriage was solid. But then Rachel, a co-worker from my Denver legal firm, stormed into my office, her cheeks flushed with nervousness. She went on to access Brianna Moore's Facebook profile, saying, "You must see this." According to reports, my spouse of 8 years was on a wilderness retreat to decompress from the stress of his profession. He's living it up at a fancy resort with his 20-something secretary. I continued looking at the pictures, strolls on the beach at sunset, candlelit dinners, kisses stolen beside the pool, timestamps and horrific notes like, "Finally with my true love and no more hiding," are attached to each one. I nearly smiled at the silliness of their neglect. "Oh my God, Liana, I'm so heartbroken." Rachel reached for my hand and murmured, "How are you going to react?" I turned off my laptop slowly. I keep a neutral appearance since I worked in the courts for years. Because his mistress couldn't help but broadcast their love getaway on social media, Nathan was oblivious that his well-planned camping trip was going to come apart. He drank cocktails and ruined our marriage without realizing that he had given me everything I needed to damage him. I said, first, and took out a legal document. To find out whether my lovely hubby is interested, I'm going to text him. I sent you another message. I miss you terribly. I look forward to hearing about all of your outdoor adventures. Rachel glanced at me with apparent astonishment. Do you not want to confront him? I smiled as I recalled all the cases I had won by giving my opponents the impression that they were in a stronger position. In my experience as a business lawyer, I had found that the element of surprise was often my most powerful weapon. Nathan thought his camping story was brilliant, and he never imagined that his mistress's addiction to social media would be his undoing. What's better than revealing his deceit, do you know? Rachel was already taking notes on my legal pad when I asked, so he could keep lying as I ruined his entire life. At Stanford Law School, I got to know Nathan. He was friendly and driven, and he seemed to share my values of tenacity and diligence. While some couples in our class drifted away due to the pressure of rigorous study schedules and competitive internships, we grew closer. Anyway, it was my original thought. After I graduated, I turned down a job offer from a well-known company in New York to stay in Denver with Nathan. One of the top investing firms in the city, Morrison & Webster, had recruited him. Additionally, I didn't want us to date remotely before being married. "You're making the right decision," he had said. "We are a team." After quickly rising through the ranks and achieving my own success, I was promoted to Lambert & Cole's youngest corporate attorney position. Nathan appears to be happy with my achievements. But in retrospect, I could see how his smile would tighten whenever a client specifically requested that I take care of their case. Who can claim that our marriage was flawless? We settled disputes by coming to an agreement, identifying a middle ground, and bargaining like attorneys. Then Brianna started working at his firm 6 months ago. She appears to be quite talented at her job and is youthful and attractive. Nathan would remark that she's very efficient and that this is the first time he's had a secretary who can keep up with my schedule. I chose to dismiss the warning flags. I trusted my spouse after all. Rachel's voice jolted me out of my daydream. "Remember when he failed to attend your anniversary dinner last month? Stated that he worked a late shift." I visited Brianna's Facebook profile once more and went back over her history. There was a check-in at Barolo Grill that same evening. The caption stated, "Working late at night has never felt better." Rachel shook her head when I muttered, "I can't believe I was so blind." "You weren't blind, Liana. You believed. There is a difference." I considered every other signal. I tossed away the new gym membership because he never used it, the unforeseen interest in out-of-state conferences and jobs. The passwords on his phone and laptop had changed. I had handled innumerable divorce cases and had seen the classic indications, but I had convinced myself that our marriage was special. What's the worst thing, you know? I mentioned our shared account records. He's using our money to finance their little romance. When I showed Rachel the most recent transactions, her eyes sprang wide. First-class tickets to Punta Cana, a 5-star resort. "Yes," I said, getting ready to send my bank an email, but it wouldn't be long. For the following hour, I meticulously recorded each questionable transaction from our shared accounts. Dinner is forgotten in the living room, becoming chilly. It didn't matter, as I was constructing my argument. The evidence was damning. Meals at places I'd never been, costs for jewels I'd never received, the cost of hotels in the cities where Nathan claimed to be seeing customers. "Look at this, please." I pointed at my screen and said it to Rachel. 3 months ago, he planned their trip to Punta Cana. This was no spontaneous moment. He has been prepared for it. But what made him tell you that he was going camping? Why not just claim it was another work trip? I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with another text from Nathan. This time, he offered a photo of a tent set up by a lake, a classic camping image that was plainly grabbed off the internet. "Home sweet home," his message read. "The stars are amazing out here." My hand trembled, not with grief, but with cold rage. He couldn't even find a trustworthy photo to back up his untruth after 8 years of marriage. I discovered what I was searching for when I opened my inbox. I had helped examine several contracts for Nathan's business months prior, and I was given the employee handbook in bold. Relationships between direct subordinates and supervisors are entirely illegal and will be dismissed straight away. "Rachel," I murmured hesitantly, "did you know that Brianna has been using Instagram to chronicle their whole relationship?" We obtained her profile. It was a treasure trove. Months of subtle photos that were all somehow incriminating. Coffee cups with Nathan's name visible, his watch in the corner of dinner shots, even a picture in his office after hours. Her sat on his desk as he beamed up at her. Rachel, who had been examining the financial paperwork I had collected more carefully, responded in a strained voice, "It gets worse. Take a look at these transfers." My stomach sank when I saw what she had found. There had been more to Nathan's romance than spending our joint money. For months, he had been depositing large sums of money into a covert account. I had no knowledge of this account. $90,000. As I stared at the total, I muttered, "He has been concealing his wealth." Rachel cautiously stated, "That's more than just a fair money. It looks like money from an exit plan." I finished. He has been getting ready to end our relationship. The realization hit me like a kick to the gut. This was more than just an affair. It was a calculated plan. While I'd been establishing our life together, he'd been preparing his departure with a younger girl, meticulously hiding assets and prepared to blindside me. I decided and went to my feet. "Rachel, I need a favor. Would you be able to cover the rest of the meetings for me this week?" "Of course," she said. "How are you going to react?" I grabbed my phone and typed my spouse another passionate text to let him know how much I missed him. He would wish he had never learnt to lie because of me. The next morning, I went into Harriman Credit Union. As soon as they opened, the manager knew me from the corporate accounts I oversaw, brought me into his office immediately away. "Mrs. Thompson, what's bringing you in so early? I need to discuss some odd behavior I've noticed on my joint accounts," I stated as I flipped through copies of Nathan's transfers. "I think my spouse has been transferring funds without my permission or knowledge. I moved my personal money to a separate, safe account and frozen our joint accounts in less than an hour. Nathan wouldn't realize this until he tried to access the money, maybe when he had to pay for his romantic hideaway." I returned to my office and began the second part. I called Nathan's company's HR director, Susan Mills, who has been a longtime client of mine. I began by saying, "Susan, I have a delicate topic to discuss." The subject matter was Nathan and Brianna, his secretary. More. Susan's voice grew sharp. "What about them?" I forwarded to her a carefully curated selection of Brianna's social media posts. "I believe that this violates the policies of your organization about the interaction between supervisors and subordinates." The silence on the other end made it clear. "This has to be escalated immediately." Susan finally said something. "This is really concerning. I understand." I responded in a professional manner. "I just felt you needed to know." Then I called our locksmith. Being in charge of all home maintenance had advantages. Nathan had never been interested in any of these things. Yes, if at all possible, I must get all of the locks changed today while awaiting the locksmith. I began packing Nathan's belongings. Each monogrammed shirt, expensive tie, and elegant suit was stuffed into a sturdy garbage bag. 8 years of marriage had been reduced to black trash bags on our spotless driveway. My phone was buzzing. "Nathan hasn't texted anyone else. I'm eager to tell you about all of my travels." I smiled as I typed back. "You two will be missed. Hi. Quick question. Did you remember to pay the credit card bill before you left?" He responded quickly. "Of course, don't worry about anything, honey. One more falsehood." I was now gazing at the past due notice, so I knew he hadn't paid it. He had neglected his daily responsibilities since he was too busy planning his trip. Rachel called at about noon. "Leanna, you have to see this. Brianna just made another post. I went to Facebook. My spouse was spotted raising a glass of champagne while on a sunset cruise." The caption stated, "Living my best life with my sweetheart. No longer hiding, no longer hiding." Indeed. I muttered, transferring the photo to Susan at HR. The locksmith arrived immediately after my divorce attorney emailed to confirm that she had sent in the required paperwork. It was all coming together. My phone then rang. James Morrison himself, Nathan's supervisor. Liana. He spoke in a serious tone. I'm calling for a purpose you must know. I can make a guess. We were unaware that he had been using client funds to finance this romance. The images sparked an internal audit. It's not good. I closed my eyes and thought about this new information. How terrible. A criminal charge is terrible. We'll let the cops know about it. I hung up, feeling a bizarre combination of sickness and vindication. Although this level of betrayal was surprising, it simply confirmed that I was acting honorably. I taped a note on the top of the trash bags on the driveway as a last touch. I hope going camping was worthwhile. Remember to upload images. My phone rang from an unknown number while I was looking over the last draft of my divorce documents. I had to answer for some reason. Is Liana Thompson here? The voice of a lady, strange and uneasy. Yes, who is this? My name is Sarah. I am. Up until last month, Brianna and I shared a room. Something is important for you to know. My heart started pounding. I'm paying attention. They have acted in this manner before. Brianna, Sarah said. Nathan and her. At his previous company, they had already performed the fraud. I sank into my office chair. Which plan? Targeting high-ranking executives, they gather compromising photographs before threatening to publish everything unless they are bought off. However, things were different this time. In reality, Brianna fell in love with Nathan. Their routine was disrupted when she began posting everything online. He is furious. The room seemed to be spinning. I thought about the money. Nathan had been relocating, the client monies he'd been embezzling. This was more than a simple affair. It was a sophisticated fraud that had gotten out of hand. You're telling me this, but why? Brianna phoned me weeping last night, so I asked. Nathan is making threats to hold her accountable for everything. She's terrified. I hung up and hurriedly called James Morrison back. James, we need to discuss. You might be surprised to learn how complicated this is. Within an hour, I was sitting in his office, summarizing everything Sarah had told me. James appeared to be physically ill. 3 other businesses, he responded, looking over the documentation I'd prepared. 3 other executives were blackmailed. How could we have overlooked this? Because they were cautious. I responded, till Brianna went off script. My phone was buzzing. Again, dinner by the campfire with Nathan. I wish you were here. I stared at his message, identifying it as what it was. Not merely a deceit, but a purposeful plot point. All those business trips and those late nights at work. How many more con artists did he run that I didn't know about? James leaned forward. Leona, we need to use caution. This is now a federal lawsuit, assuming your statements are correct. Why? For dishonesty, blackmail, embezzlement. I know exactly how we ought to handle it, I said, pulling out my phone. I typed a message to Nathan. Darling, there has been a problem with one of our accounts. Is it possible for you to check your email? I then sent him a well-written email with copies of his previous frauds, Brianna's social media posts, and Sarah's statement. I added one line. It must have interrupted your camping trip. My phone was inundated with warnings in a matter of minutes. Nathan finally gave up his camping act after 6 calls. Before deleting her whole Facebook account, Brianna posted a lengthy, depressing video confession. It was the house of cards collapsing. James had already contacted the FBI. They would like to meet tomorrow morning, he said. This might be really important. I nodded, strangely relaxed. I'll be there. That evening, when I was sitting in my newly secured home, Nathan sent me one more SMS. What you have done is unknown to you. I can explain anything. I smiled as I thought about all the evidence that had been safely captured and forwarded to many agencies. I did type back, yes. I understand it perfectly. In contrast to your photos of your camping excursion, I also have real receipts. I then banned his phone and got myself a glass of wine. Tonight, I may take pleasure in the knowledge that Nathan's immaculately constructed house of lies was on fire, but tomorrow would be a very trying day. At 9 in the morning, the FBI meeting was scheduled to start. By 8:30, the lobby at Morrison and Webster was a mess. Dominican police reportedly detained Nathan and Brianna at the airport as they tried to depart Punta Cana separately. They extorted 6 of our most valued clients, and he muttered, rubbing his temples, "James Morrison looked like he hadn't slept 6 clients. The amount is more over $2 million. The forensic accountants I finished working through the night said that's all we found thus far. A shrewd woman in her 40s named Agent Phillips laid out photographs on the conference table. Nathan and Brianna all behave in the same way, even though they have different bosses. The evidence was overwhelming, Mrs. Thompson. Your spouse and Miss Moore will be extradited within 48 hours, she said. But for us, the money trail is more important. Those offshore accounts were found by you. My phone was buzzing. It was a message from an unknown number. Nathan is using a hotel telephone. Baby, please. You're destroying everything. We can fix this. Agent Phillips nodded when I gave the message to him. Don't interrupt his conversation. Work. What's missing? I answered the text message. The affair or the crimes? You're not getting it, he responded immediately. I handled this for us. The money was meant for our future, our prospects. I almost laughed out loud when you were about to leave me. Who mentioned that to you? Brianna. She is lying. She is not important. Agent Phillips was recording every message. She noticed him scrambling. Put up more effort. Really? I composed. So you didn't help her set up the Cayman's account? The one that you have been using to transfer money from customers. Several times, the typing bubbles appeared and vanished. Finally, how were you made aware of it? I put an end to his thought process. I'm a business lawyer, Nathan. I make a living by literally following money trails. By the way, greetings from the FBI. His response was hasty and desperate. I'll tell you where all the money is. Please don't let them arrest me. The agent, Phillips, smiled. I got him. Within a few hours, Nathan and Brianna were arrested. Nobody had foreseen the extent of their scheme. The FBI found accounts across multiple states, companies, and victims in 3 different countries. In order to discuss the company's situation, James Morrison called an urgent board meeting. He began. I responded, "We'll make it, because you were able to capture it. All victims are being made whole after it was reported. That's the story we're telling." He looked at me appreciatively. If you want to be our general counsel, Liana, let me think about it. Despite knowing the answer, I said, I had higher goals in mind. Rachel brought over wine and food later that night while I sat in my home office. So she added, I heard Nathan seeking to plea bargain. I offered a nod, willing to provide testimony against all individuals who were involved in their past acts. It seems that even I did not discover all the victims. How are you doing? I glanced at the degrees hanging on the wall of my office. The case files were mine, the life I had made. What do you find funny? He always considered my job to be a hobby. I did this to pass the time till we had kids. He was unaware of that. All those skills, all that knowledge. It was precisely what I needed to overcome him. So Rachel raised her glass to karma. No. Thinking of all the evidence I had systematically acquired, all the legal threads I had pulled, and all the dominoes I had meticulously lined up before bringing them to justice, I corrected her. The kind you make up for yourself. Fortunately, the trial was brief. Nathan and Brianna both agreed to plea deals. He received an 8-year sentence. She earned a 5. Given the volume of evidence I had gathered, their counsel advised against challenging the charges. In the end, the man who had dominated others for years couldn't win this one with words alone. I sat in the courtroom for punishment wearing the same deep blue suit I wore during our first law school mock trial. Nathan couldn't quit gazing at me. He had a desperate, disbelieving look on his face. It had now dawned on him that I had been playing chess while he was playing checkers. Your Honor. He made one last attempt. I could address this in private with my wife. He was interrupted by Judge Matthews. Your wife isn't pursuing charges, Mr. Thompson. The federal government is in charge. We also have evidence of many cases of wire fraud, extortion, and embezzlement. I didn't stay to watch him being executed. Instead, when I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Denver morning, I felt lighter than I had in years. I already had my own staff, a corner office, and a promotion from Morrison and Webster to general counsel. But more importantly, I had started a side business that helped companies identify and steer clear of internal fraud. There was a huge demand for someone who had uncovered one of the biggest corporate blackmail schemes in Colorado history. Nathan got his last letter a week later. I put it in the shredder without opening it. A concluding page is not essential for all chapters. They just have to quit. The media focus eventually faded, and I was able to find a new rhythm in my life. Clients from 3 states sought my services, and my fraud consultancy firm expanded faster than I had expected. Sometimes I worried if Nathan saw the articles about my achievement from his jail cell. Sarah, Brianna's former flatmate, stopped by my office one morning 6 months after the sentencing. With trepidation, she said, "I heard you help companies protect themselves against fraud now. I'm starting a small business." I took a moment to look at her after all that had happened, remembering how her phone call had been essential to revealing Nathan's entire scheme. Later that evening, as I was working late in my corner office at Morrison and Webster, I said to James Morrison, "The first consultation is free." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He said, "Just signed another client. They specifically asked you to handle their case. Said that they heard how you handled the Thompson scandal." I smiled at the irony. Rather, Nathan's ambition to destroy me was my strongest selling point. James went on to explain that when he was in prison, he tried to write to me and urged me to have you reply to his letters. I kept typing without looking up. I also told him that you were too busy running 2 successful businesses to read jail letters. I finally looked up and noticed my picture in the office window. The woman gazing back was neither a victim nor a betrayed wife. She was a survivor who overcame betrayal. "Perfect answer," I said, and went back to work.